Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be reviewing one of my more anticipated films of 2023, John Wick Chapter 4. Like most people, I'm a huge fan of the John Wick franchise. I'm one of the few people here that actually thinks that each installment has gotten better than the previous one. And with John Wick Chapter 4, it's one of those situations, especially when you get to like the fourth film of a franchise, that you kind of are wondering, does it still have the same oomph, or have we kind of hit this bump in the road where it starts to feel like we're watching the same old thing over and over and over again, or does it still keep you exciting? Does it still keep you engaged throughout? One of the bigger things that I maybe kind of go, okay, big swing, but could also backfire, is that this is hands down the longest John Wick movie by far at 2 hours and 49 minutes. Most John Wick movies are nowhere near that long. And a part of me was going to wonder if I was going to get, not necessarily bored, but kind of the action would have been overused to the point where it just started to kind of feel monotonous after a point. What I can say is John Wick Chapter 4 does succeed on all counts. It is hands down the best John Wick by far, of the now quadrilogy. It takes a pretty much, for the most part, a good chunk of its time really well. Is there about a 15 to 20 minute window that they probably could have cut from the film? Yes. Is it bad? No, not by any means. But for me, I do think that there's probably about a 15-20 minute sequence in this movie that they probably could have cut out and made the film a little bit stronger and tighter. I'll touch on that here a little bit later. But with this cast, one of the main things has always been with the John Wick franchises is that, yes, you've got Keanu Reeves as John Wick, you've got the late great Lance Reddick as Chiron, and then you got Ian McShane as Winston, and then also Lawrence Fishburne as the King. And then everyone else is kind of like new additions, and sometimes the new additions are either memorable, or they're memorable in the wrong way, or they really just didn't serve much purpose. Much like Ruby Rose in John Wick 2, not so much, but Common was decent, and in John Wick 3, Mark Dacascos was fantastic, and a fan favorite of mine throughout the franchise. This John Wick has probably got the best overall new additions to the cast. You've got Clancy Brown as a Harbinger. You've got Bill Skarsgård as the new kind of villain of the movie. He's the Marquis. There's more to that title, but I will butcher it, so I'm not going to say it. You got Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Shimizu, who actually runs the Osaka Continental. Shamir Anderson plays Mr. Nobody. He's a tracker who's really a wild card throughout this film for John Wick. You got Rina Sawayama, who plays Akira, who is Shimazu's daughter, who's basically the Sharon of the Osaka Continental. And of course, one of the best additions and one of my favorite characters out of the John Wick franchise now, Donnie Yen as Kane. Donnie Yen is once again playing a blind martial artist, much like he did in Rogue One, where he was a blind Jedi. John Wick's franchise likes to use, or at least likes to cast characters that has disabilities, much like Ruby Rose in John Wick 2 was deaf. Now we've got Donnie Yen's Kane, who's blind. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, how can a blind man in a world where gunfire and everything, basically what the John Wick franchise is like, can survive, and actually not survive, but dominate? And Donnie Yen does an amazing job throughout this. It doesn't feel, there are moments where, yes, you're like, oh, how can he, hear where the bullets are coming and all this kind of stuff, because there's so much noise. But it's also one of those things where Donnie Yen does a really good job of portraying that he's blind throughout the film, with his constantly reaching out and feeling where he's going, and always not landing perfectly on each kind of, like when he's trying to grab for something, he misses and then grabs. He's not the perfect blind person that we see in a lot of movies, where the blind person just grabs everything perfectly, which makes you feel like they're not really blind. Donnie Yen actually does a great job of doing this. Is the blind aspect necessary in this film? No, but it does add a I would say it adds a crutch to Donnie Yen because Donnie Yen's Kane, if he wasn't blind, probably would dominate John Wick if need be in a fight. Adding the blindness factor to Kane definitely kind of balances it all out. But Kane is right up there with Mark Dacascos, I think it was Nero from John Wick 3, as probably one of the most dangerous allies slash potential villains to John Wick thus far. Bill Skarsgård as Marquis does a really great job of being the new villain in this. He's not someone who's going to obviously fight John Wick, but in terms of being this cold mastermind who's trying to basically burn everything that John Wick touches to try to kill the mythos of John Wick, I think Skarsgård actually does a really good job. Hiroyuki Sanada and Rina Sawayama, I think, do a great job as well. I mean, Sonata's fantastic and everything. I love Sonata. I mean, dude's Scorpion. I mean, how can you not love the dude? But Rina, this is her first, I think it's her first role, and I think she actually does a really solid job of introducing the Akira character, but also holding her own in the action sequences to the point where I would be excited to see her in future installments because we do know that the John Wick franchise as a whole is going to be branching out to spin-offs and everything. And this movie is kind of that launch pad to branch these out into different avenues so we can maybe give John Wick a little bit of a breather and start showing off other characters. Shamir Anderson as Mr. Nobody, that's another character that really kind of comes in. You really don't know where he lies in terms of the storyline, but he is this kind of character that is just intriguing. And I think he actually does a solid performance all the way throughout. Now, yes, the same hangups that you would probably have for the previous John Wick films are still here. It seems everyone in this world's an assassin. It doesn't seem like cops exist anywhere in this world. The believability that all these suits are not only bulletproof, but basically absorbent proof to the point that they're wearing like a Black Panther suit that they can get hit by cars and fall off buildings and really not get hurt at all by this. If you can't get past that, then you shouldn't have watched John Wick 4 because that's been kind of the way these franchises have been since John Wick 2 and 3. It does get a little kind of monotonous because 90% of the time John Wick is literally holding his jacket up like this to protect his face, and people are literally within 6 inches of him shooting at him and it has no effect on him, which it would probably have to hurt at some point, or times where John Wick or other people are getting destroyed by cars and are still getting up like they basically just got knocked over by the wind. As long as you can kind of accept that, be okay with that, John Wick is going to be a fun-filled ride throughout. And I was able to, for the most part, not let that bother me. The whole world of John Wick, this is definitely the biggest John Wick. This is definitely the biggest John Wick we've ever had. It's on a bigger scale in terms of globetrotting and going to different locations, but this is also a movie because of its runtime of 2 hours and 49 minutes that it is probably the most well thought out story. It's the biggest story. Yes, is it as personal as probably John Wick 1 about him, trying to get, revenge on the person that killed his dog? No, but it is still a very important story, not even necessarily for John Wick, but for this supporting cast around him, especially for Donnie Yen's Kane and Sanada's Shimizu, and all these characters. It's all about family to a point, and I'm not trying to say that in terms of trying to connect it to the Fast and Furious, because that's not at all what I'm trying to do. But in terms of brotherhood, fatherhood, all this kind of stuff is really strong throughout this. Friendships are fabricated and fractured because of the events of the previous films. And because that's the thing with John Wick is, yes, he is the Baba Yaga. Yes, he is the hero. But a lot of the stuff he's done through these last 3 films are having repercussions now in this 4th film. There are characters that are greatly changed, and that's the way I'm going to say it without spoiling anything, because of what John's done in this last 3 movies with the high table and basically the previous assassins that tried to go at him. So in terms of the actual story, there is a huge cost, not just for John Wick, but for everyone that's connected to John Wick in these films, which definitely ups the ante on a lot of the characters and where their outcomes go throughout the film. Now, I will say this, in terms of John Wick as a whole, this is hands down one of the most beautiful looking action films in recent memory. I mean, probably since Mad Max Fury Road. Has there been so much amazing cinematography and just beautiful shots? There's been at least a handful of times throughout this film where I'm watching a shot and I'm going, damn, that looks beautiful. The action set pieces, the stunt choreography in this film, and hands off to Keanu, who did a lot of his stunts in this film. There's so much in this movie that is just awe-inspiring and awesome, and can leave you watching. There are long periods of action sequences that are just amazing to watch. The Osaka Continental sequence, for instance, goes almost about 25 minutes long, and it is fantastic. There's this amazing ceiling one-shot that is about 5 minutes long that is, to me, probably one of the coolest visual shots that we've ever seen in a John Wick film to date. There's I don't know what the exact thing is, but there's that big roundabout in Paris. And that's another big, long, almost 10 to 12 minute sequence with cars and guns and all this kind of stuff that's awesome. There's this fantastic stair chase sequence that's fun. There's so many great, amazing action sequences and fights and choreography with the stunt teams and everything that when we do our end of the year awards for the Movie Crusaders, there might well be just a John Wick category because there's just so many fantastic scenes. This movie deserves to be recognized for how amazing its stunt choreography team is, much like how the Planet of the Apes films should have gotten acknowledged for their CGI characters like Andy Serkis for playing Caesar. The John Wick stunt team and Keanu Reeves as well deserves to be acknowledged by the Academy for how phenomenal they do in these films. You got to take almost kind of like a video game aspect to it. Obviously, characters are not getting hurt. There's a lot of characters that should have died instantly that still keep getting up and fighting. There's, like I said, no real essence of police in this world at all. I don't think I hear a single cop siren throughout this entire film. There's a piece in Berlin, which to me is if you're gonna take anything out of this film, I would take the whole Berlin sequence out. I don't feel like it does anything to strengthen the film. It adds a whole another action set piece, which for most people makes that exciting. But that action set piece, it's in a club, really kind of bugged me throughout. Not because of the fighting, but because of the extras around the fight. I'm not going to go into detail on that because I don't want to spoil things, but that whole sequence, I spent more time being annoyed with the extras and just what was actually happening, that to the point where after the movie was over, I was like, they could have taken this sequence out. The film still would have been just as good, probably stronger. And I think it's Scott Adkins' character of, it might be Klaus. I'm going to have to look it up because he's not on the main page here. But I kind of had a feeling right from the get-go when I saw his, basically, posters. I'm sorry, Killa. Or, no, he might be Klaus. I don't know. He's one of them. Scott Adkins' character. He's wearing a fat suit. It does not work for me. It works for most people. I knew right from the get-go, I was like, I am not going to like this character. And he's part of that Berlin chapter. But like I said, that's a nitpick thing. Even the Berlin chapter, while very good, is probably the one piece I would have taken out personally. But above all else, John Wick Chapter 4 succeeds in everything that it's trying to accomplish. The stakes are higher, the action's crazier, the brutality of everything. John Wick with nunchucks has done more than Michelangelo and the Teenage Ninja Turtles has ever done with nunchucks. And that's coming from a Turtles fan. This movie is awesome. And the 2 hour 49 minute runtime, while long, does not feel its length. There are points where you're wondering if you're going to get action overload, but they take time throughout this film to stop the action and actually develop the story and actually develop actual character building, so that way you're not just going action, action, action. When you do get to those action set pieces, yes, they are quite long, but they're enjoyable all the way throughout. To me, my favorite John Wick film thus far. Cannot wait to see it again. It's not perfect. No John Wick film is, but most films aren't perfect at all. Like I said, most of my problems with the film are more nitpicky than anything else, but thus John Wick Chapter 4 is a must-see. If you have IMAX or a theater with fantastic sound design, pay that extra money to watch this film in those particular theaters because you will not be disappointed. Sadly, I don't live near that, but even while watching this in a regular theater, I was like, this would have looked amazing in IMAX with, like, you know, big Dolby speakers. I'm going to give John Wick Chapter 4 a 90%. That's my highest rated review movie of the year so far. Strong recommendation if you're a big John Wick fan. Obviously, if you're a John Wick fan, of course you're seeing this movie. If you haven't seen John Wick before, watch the other 3 John Wicks and go check out John Wick Chapter 4. You will not be disappointed. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we have the Weekly Crusaders, where Brian, Michaels, and myself will talk about 2 movies that came out during this week in movie history. Our latest episode of Cinemasochism is out, where we talk about Tammy and the T-Rex, and that is a fun-ass episode. We are laughing throughout the whole thing. It is a joy to watch. I hope you guys check it out. Next week, we got Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, so there will be a review for that. And also more Cinemasochism, more Weekly Crusaders. So much on the channel. We hope you guys check that out. And until next time, in case I don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.